I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome. West Point, Mississippi. We've got one of our favorite guests today.
One of those smart guys.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get him introduced. We've got Dr. Mike Chamberlain.
Boom.
How's it going, guys?
Doing good.
For the public, we probably had just a 20-something minute discussion. That would have been a great podcast already.
More to come later.
Yeah, it's just, one of those things in the world when you just have people you have this instant chemistry with, and we have always had that, at least, to good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have.
Well, Mike's one of those guys that, is a hunter at his core, so.
Oh, yes.
It's so good to have his opinions and research.
Doctor, we missed you the last few episodes. We know you've been dealing with some tough issues, and we're just glad to see you.
Thank you. But I appreciate that. It's been harder than I thought, as far as that. But I thought I've been able to get prepared, and we took our time a little bit, and the family really, really was able to celebrate and honor in so many ways. I don't want to get into all the stuff that happened, from all the law enforcement people and the flags at half mast and on and on and on stuff. So
yeah,
he just would and is just like, wow. So the hole in your heart will always be there, like Mike and I talked about a little bit. But at the same time, when you're doing things that they would have loved for you to do, it helps fill that hole, just like you're doing with the foundation, which we need to be sure we talk about every time we're on the air with him or doing a podcast. So before we're done today, be sure and bring that up.
Yeah.
And glad to have you back in the grind.
Yeah, this is very medicinal for me to be back in the fray. In fact, I forgot all about that stuff when we started talking turkeys and deer and stuff with Doc a minute ago.
Well, look, so this will be really one of the first podcasts where we started talking turkeys. But yesterday we had a guy come in here to give us a little help on some box calls and stuff, and he had made some. They're supposed to be really good mouth calls, Doc. I couldn't get this one to run, so I'm going to save this one for you.
Oh, wouldn't you know?
Yeah, you
Watch that one
got you one, Toxic. So.
Well, thank you.
He's fairly accomplished on a mouth call. I've heard him do it.
Is that an 8?
And Bobby, Bobby can't
DNA
find.
on it.
That's the thing about Bobby. He gives them away because he can't run anything.
Yeah.
I
tried that one, but I washed it off.
Did it sound pretty good when you tried it?
It did sound good, but
good. Maybe it'll sound.
I thought Toxic would appreciate it. All right, guys.
Probably not.
So I think we just get right into this one.
Absolutely.
And Mike, I'm going to ask a question just right off the bat before we start talking turkey. How did your deer season go?
Yeah, it was good. It was weird. I don't know if
yes,
we had weird one too.
It was weird. It was hot and until it wasn't, and there were acorns were just insane. And that said, I shot my 2 bucks here in Georgia the first 8, 9, 10 days of the year, and my season ended, early. And my wife she won't listen to this, so she won't hear it. But I because I don't want to admit this to her if she brought it up, but I didn't get as mad this year as I normally do, and I think it was because the weather was bad and deer movement was pretty slow. And when I killed those 2 bucks, I just kind of took my foot off the gas and spent a little time around the house and, took care of things that probably would normally build up. Went to Louisiana and hunted over there some, and, I was hunting in shorts and Crocs, and it was just a tough year, man. But I ended up killing a really nice deer in Louisiana too. And so my freezer's full, and I didn't hunt as much to fill my freezer, which all said, I'm blessed to be able to say that. So, but it was, I just thought it was a strange season in a lot of ways.
We're hearing a lot of states aren't hitting their numbers.
Oh, well, I know we hadn't in Mississippi. and
Everybody I
Alabama.
talked to seemed to think it was it's
The
Dudley's
acorn
fault. It was the acorn mast.
Yeah, masting.
I've
was
never
just-
seen anything like it
the
in the
spec-
places I hunt.
Yeah, me too. Especially, it may be helping some now. I'm sure it's going to help a lot
You
of
would
stuff.
think it would.
But the small acorns were crazy. The willow
Yeah.
water, cherry bark, southern red, all those small, hard turkeys can eat them. They last longer. That's actually the good stuff to have. It was crazy how many we had.
I mean,
They're still everywhere.
I got pigs everywhere, and I can walk up to like a little dry creek, and you just dip your hands down in there, and your hands are full of acorns.
Mm-hmm.
I've never
just
seen them
raft
last
up.
as long. We do have. You may have more, but for some reason also, and that's another topic for another day. We had a drop, and it was pretty widespread of hog numbers. Nobody was seeing them. The trappers weren't trapping them. They didn't show up on cameras, and this is for pretty much our whole county here, and actually the stuff in Alabama that I'm doing some stuff in. It was weird, but it was good. I mean, did we find dead carcasses from something? No, but I don't know. Maybe there was something going on.
I think
weird.
they were all at my place.
There you go. They
Yeah.
moved into
I'm
Dudley's.
telling you, they absolutely moved out for a while. And so, having said that, our mass crop for the first time in a very long time has lasted a lot longer.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. Well, I'm not optimistic. It's been shown. Bumper acorn yield years like this, our turkeys should be going into the reproductive season in peak body condition.
Yes.
Yeah, you hit the horns, Richie.
Yes.
And that's exciting for me. I don't know if it'll translate to what I'm hoping is a better reproductive year, but I know it's going to translate to better body condition, and
Well,
that is never a bad thing.
And maybe the predators kind of have a full tummy too.
A little bit, maybe.
No,
No,
never
that's
thought
that's
about
to
that.
come in like May and stuff. But you've taught us there are multiple parameters, and even the timing for that successful hatch. But the biggest and most important one to start with is the health.
Yeah, if she's in peak body condition and she's, in the bird world, fat is good. And so if they can build, strong fat reserves, then she can incubate. She could be more persistent in her incubation behaviors. She's not going to have to take as many recesses. All that translates into higher nest success. So,
I feel like you tell me if this might happen or not, but I feel like you might have, under other conditions will matter, a little more vigorous, gobbling season, because we've had more success just in the last year or two. So there should be more competition. But if they're in better shape, you would think maybe they're gobble more,
Yeah, I don't know about that. What I do know is that the 24, the 24 spring reproductive season across the South, we saw an uptick in production.
Mm-hmm.
And so that should translate into more 2-year-olds in our spring flocks this year.
Exactly.
That's what I
All
need.
right.
My favorite.
Love a 2-year-old.
My favorite.
The
Oh, everybody's
W's are
favorite,
out,
yeah.
so-
That's the ego booster of all things.
No doubt.
But
even Bobby's call is going to sound
that's right.
poetic and sweet.
I don't know about that, Mike.
That's a stretch. We're thinking Jake's still for him. So you'd be the first for everybody out there managing their own place to say, I believe is like, so you got a glut. Finally, you got a bunch of 2 years old, and you would be the first to say, enjoy them, but be very, very careful.
Very judicious, because you
Yes.
don't know when you'll get another slug of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
advice.
but I'm optimistic that it's going to be a little more noisy this year, and that's a good thing.
Ooh, getting me
Yeah.
excited.
Me too. Well, Mike, let me ask this question, and I'm asking for a friend.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But this time of year when deer season ends, a lot of people like to, start thinking about their turkeys, and they might go and try to feed up some areas and just. Is that a good idea?
Good question.
And
Great question.
but I'd like to ask Mike the hunter, and I'd like to ask Mike the turkey research guy that
so,
question.
So if the research has shown that obviously turkeys are going to use feed if it's there, but it tends to be highly variable from bird to bird and flock to flock. One thing to understand this time of year is we're still, even in the deep South, unless you get into Florida, but in most of the South, our winter flocks are still, in full formation. So we haven't started seeing breeding groups that are splitting out really. So if you've got birds on your property now, there's a chance that you're attempting to feed them, that may not at all translate into keeping birds there into the spring, because these winter flocks are going to dissolve, and when they do, those breeding groups are going to move to other parts of their range, and that movement could be the next property over. It could be miles down the road. So just understand that it's not a 1-to-1. If I put some feed out and I get a turkey on camera on February the 5th or 10th or 15th or whatever, that bird is going to be in my breeding population when it's time for me to put a shotgun in my hand.
It honestly seems like to me it's kind of what leads the caboose is great nesting. I know we keep going back to that, but the hens are going to end up calling the shots. And if they're moving on to better nesting, that's where they're going to go. Food or no food, that's where gobblers are going to be,
Well, and we're clearly showing this in our research too, is that, turkeys have a really strong fidelity to these breeding areas. So when they leave these winter flocks every year, they go back to the same places year after year after year, generation after generation. And we're also seeing that, the toms are going to leave and they're going to go first to these areas because they have this history, this tradition of going back to these areas. And the hens are going to show up. So these toms, their agenda is driven in the weeks to come around where hens are going to be, not where there's resources per se. The resource is the hen, right? Right. And we can all relate, as everyone sitting here in this podcast can relate, that sometimes resources pale in comparison to the opposite sex, and in the turkey world, that's what dictates spring behaviors for males, for sure.
I still remember the story in some of the real early research done was the place I grew up hunting down there at Choctaw Bluff, and Dr. Dan Speak from Auburn was doing stuff. That was one of the first ever radio, and I can't imagine how I didn't see one, but it probably looked like a transistor radio, but it was a radio collared hen. And so Mr. Simpson's house there in this sanctuary never allowed any hunting. He'd always have feeders so he could watch them out the window in the winter and stuff and whatever. They had a hen that was radio collared. And so she would spend the whole winter there because there's a lot of oak mass and hardwood there too on top of them feeding. She would go, I want to say it's between 5 and 6 miles, but she went 6 miles up a creek all the way off of the property on actually it had been clear cut, think IP land. And she nested successfully, and she would go back to within less than 50 yards of the same spot for, I think, 4 straight years.
Wow.
That far away. Now, why? I don't know. Maybe it was the first place that she came across she liked, but her route was up a creek. It was a defined, like, a lot of alpine land type creek going up there. But I thought that was fascinating. They always talked about how she'd go back to try to find to the same spot. And I wonder if, having been successful, they'll just seek out the same spot they were successful in before.
Yeah, we typically see that they do end up going to the same general area every year. They may not go to the same, they don't go to the same nest spot per se, but the same stand,
right,
is certainly within reason. And I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. If they go one year, particularly if they're successful, that it makes sense that they would go back. And even if they're not successful, but they survive, then, you would think that is wired into them ecologically, that, okay, well, I made it through that experience, so that's a fairly safe place.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking about these male flocks and dispersion before the breeding season. I can understand, we're seeing, a lot of long beards together, and then they're kind of like deer. Once it gets, testosterone starts going up or things start happening, they're going to break up. But do the hens, do they just go into pods, or, I mean, it's not so individual. Is it that individualistic with them, or is it family groups, or is there any kind of research about that?
Yeah. In fact, we just published a paper back in December on kind of sociality within these breeding groups. And so what you see is, imagine you've got a flock of 20 hens. They are going in the winter at the end of February, 1st of March in the deep south. They're going to kind of blow up into like 5, 4 groups of 5, if you will. And within those, and those groups of 5 are going to move out of that winter range. Again, sometime, they may move next door, they may move to some other part of your property if you have a large property, or they may be a couple miles down the road. And within those flocks, some of those hens are related to one another and some of them are not.
I was going to ask that.
And mostly it's often not. And we think, and what that suggests to us is that they see a cost to associating with kin as they get closer and closer to breeding. And what we found, what we showed in this paper we've just published, is that once they start laying, the probability that there's almost zero probability that they will interact, like be right beside a closely related hen. So they really start isolating themselves genetically or from a relatedness standpoint when it's time to reproduce, which, I mean, logically, I think is an inbreeding avoidance thing.
Sure. For diversity.
Yeah, and I mean, being away from another nest, probably some, the predator thing, if a predator's
100%.
attracted,
100%.
The whole
they definitely
thing is
buffer themselves. Yeah, they unlike ducks that'll nest right beside another duck. Turkeys don't, as y'all know, turkeys don't do that. They kind of want to isolate themselves, and we think that's partially a predation issue where they're avoiding, risk, but we also know that they avoid each other. Like they don't want other hens or other birds to know where they're nesting. They're very secretive in that way. And we think that's to avoid parasitism, where you've got a hen laying eggs in another hen's nest, which we have documented that does happen. So
wow. Wow, that's all of that is so fascinating. I've had so many people over the last couple of years as we do more and more, and it reaches more and more people, and they, they're waking up about habitat. What does that mean? How does that mean? And that's like, go back and listen to stuff we've done with the good doctor here. But what I just try to tell them is like, so I think what you told me is what I've been telling them. She's looking for somewhere where her nest is completely hidden, but from her nest she can see really good too. So that's where it's got to be that, right, wrong, or different, early successional type look that's clumpy, not solid brush. Yet, it does have lots and lots of cover. So I just try to say, think about it this way. She wants to be completely hidden, yet she wants to be able to watch everything around her still.
Yeah, hiding in plain sight. It's
correct.
Kind of the way I think about it. If that should make sense, if you have to escape a predator, then you need to be able to escape, but you need to be able to hide.
Right.
Yeah, you got to see him coming.
Yeah. So, Mike, I've got a property that I cannot turkey hunt on.
Oh, I know where this is.
In this beginning of this deer season, I was seeing 9 gobblers walking together, and I'd see them every time. And they'd be so quiet, so stealthy, but they were a little group. And it just went on every time I went in there and hunted. And then the last Saturday, all of a sudden, that 9 had turned into 11. There were 2 hens. And they were fighting like cats and dogs. The 9 gobblers, they were like a bunch of teenagers, just
2-year-olds,
just going after each other. There was no peace in that group at all. Were they beginning that process?
Yeah, it had been ongoing all winter, but it was had been, everybody was calm and resolute until there were females around.
Just like us.
Man, that sounds right.
Yeah, because they'll. If you watch them closely all fall, and y'all have seen this, if somebody gets out of place, then somebody puts them in their place pretty quick. But the fall is pretty calm. Everybody's kind of laid back. They're getting along. They're foraging. Everybody's happy. But then as you start getting closer and closer to the spring, fights are going to erupt, particularly if you get new individuals that are introduced into the mix. So probably what you saw is just, those 2 young ladies showed up, and now everybody that was getting along suddenly is not getting along.
So other thing that's happened, I've seen it over the years, but it seems like it's been more lately. But this year, I've been getting pictures of strutters since right after Christmas. Yeah. Sure. And I got a picture the other day, 2 big strutters, and it's where there was a couple gobblers. But in the picture, was 2 strutters. You could see one off to the side that wasn't strutting. But I just wonder if that's also the beginning of the let me show you who's going to be the boss thing, even if there's no hens around.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Strutting and even gobbling in the fall and winter we think is at least partially driven towards, establishing and in this case, maintaining dominance hierarchies, because if you're willing to strut around one of your flock members, as you saw, there's some that are not going to strut.
Nope.
Well, if they're strutting, then they're letting everybody know that they're part of the game. So, totally different deal than when you're in the spring and everybody's strutting because they're looking at something different there. They're trying to attract attention at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so research has shown that bigger groups of males that are all displaying will attract more attention. When you're seeing strutting now, it's mostly around asserting dominance and maintaining dominance over the other birds around you, which is why some of those toms are just oblivious. They don't pay any attention to any of that that's going on because it's more of a show to one another versus trying to attract attention.
A big group of longbeard strutting, that attracts my attention.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I guess everybody.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
So, Mike, what have y'all learned this wild turkey DNA? Has anything bubbled up out of that has surprised you? What's the latest going on there?
Yeah. So that was a project we launched in this past spring of 2025. And the idea was basically to start this large cooperative study that was partnered between the Wild Turkey Lab here at UGA, NWTF, Ducks Unlimited, who, as you know, because you've had Phil Lavretsky on, directs the duck DNA program. And then obviously Phil Lavretsky at UTEP, he's a partner in this. And our idea was to launch a similar program as Duck DNA, except focus it on turkeys. And we were a little late in the year getting it going through no fault of anyone's, mostly mine. We put it together very quickly, and we decided to launch the program focused around turkeys that have odd plumage, right? So color phases, if you will, or trying to understand what's the deal with these turkeys that have odd feathers. And we thought we'd get about 75 samples from birds with odd plumage, and we've gotten, I think, 135-ish or something at this point.
Awesome.
It's been eye-opening, to say the least, what we've found and what we continue to not understand. The project is actually expanding in this spring to obtain samples from all over the species range, primarily because we're seeing some things that are a little concerning, and we're wanting to better understand those things, such as genetic diversity, which we're seeing can be a little low in some of our populations, which is a bit concerning. We're seeing inbreeding potential that's a little higher than you'd like to see in some populations. So we're curious if, as we expand this project, if that's actually a real thing that we're seeing, or is that something that's much more isolated. But the odd plumage birds have, to be honest with you, Bobby, it's taken so much more of my time than I thought this project would. This has become a behemoth of an effort. Because what we've realized is that there's multiple pathways to produce a turkey that looks the same. One of those pathways is a truly 100% wild turkey that has certain genetics, certain dominant or recessive genes in a certain pattern. And one route is to cross a wild turkey with something that's not fully wild, such as a heritage turkey, which is a bunch of varieties of turkey that were originally created by crossing wild birds with domestic birds. This would be the birds you may see on the internet: bourbon reds, Narragassetts, Spanish blacks, these birds that people raise either for meat or just for aesthetics because they're pretty. Well, what we've realized is in some cases those birds are escaping and or are being released, and they are breeding with wild turkeys, and they are producing hybrid offspring. And in some cases, we're seeing that some of these birds that have odd plumage are crosses between heritage birds and wild birds. And even crazier, we're seeing that some of these odd plumage birds are 100% wild turkeys that have some really beautiful, stunning plumage patterns.
Just a mutation then on those?
Yep, genetic mutations. Yep.
Wow.
And so we are learning that, not to let the cat out of the bag, but we're learning that you cannot just look at a wild turkey and tell me what it is. It is very complex. The genetics are very complex. And Phil Lavretsky, who every time I get him on the phone, he says he pulls more of his hair out and he's getting balder faster. But Phil will tell you with a laugh and a smirk that turkey genetics are so much more complex than duck genetics.
Whoa.
That we just didn't understand it. And it's remarkable, to be honest with you. And yeah, so that project will expand this year. We're going to, last spring, if you killed a bird that had weird looking plumage, you would contact us. We would get a picture of the bird from you, and then I would determine yes or no. We want to get a sample from the bird, which is just a clip of the tongue. This year, we're going to do like Duck DNA has done with their mallard sampling, where you will go and you will register on the website, and we will pick you, trying to get a broad sampling of birds across all states and all regions within states. And we will, if we select you, we will send you kits, and you'll do the same thing you did through Duck DNA. If you kill a turkey, you'll clip the end of its tongue off, put it in the vials, tell us, register the bird on wildturkeydna.com, upload a picture of the bird, and then we will genetically test the sample to tell you. I mean, we'll learn everything from mapping out hybridization between subspecies to looking at genetic diversity within states and within regions within state, looking at inbreeding potential. There are a number of issues that we're interested in, and so we're pretty excited about it.
I may regret asking this question, but why would turkey genetics be more complicated than duck genetics?
Because, and Phil would be better to answer this than dumb redneck Mike, but the short answer is, there's a lot of pathways to get birds that look the same that can involve domestic and wild genetics. In other words, you could produce a bird that the phenotype, the appearance is identical, but you could get there several different ways. And the other thing that we're seeing is that when you start back crossing animals, it's very difficult to understand how many generations it took to get to the appearance that we're seeing,
right,
based simply on the genetics. Whereas with ducks, like Phil will tell you, you can cross a green-winged teal with a northern shoveler, and you get something that looks like this, and it's fairly easy to tease out those two species that bred.
Right.
But when you take turkeys, what we're seeing when you start clustering these birds on a graph, there's kind of a hodgepodge. There's turkeys, like Phil will explain, but turkeys are already they're already predisposed to having what's called genetic distance or isolation within parts of the landscape. Even research in Mississippi showed this years ago, that in the state of Mississippi, you have groups of birds, pockets of birds, subpopulations, if you will, that don't interact with each other. It's called genetic structure. So, for instance, when we look at samples we collected this year, you can see clear genetic separation between birds from, say, central Mississippi and Alabama to Georgia. They cluster completely separately. And then all of a sudden you add in birds from, say, eastern Kentucky, and they cluster differently than everybody else.
Right.
And so turkeys are already kind of predisposed to having a lot of genetic complexity that ducks don't. And we think, to me, logically, the explanation is at least partially that, one, they have dominance hierarchy. So a lot of individuals that are produced in the population are produced from a relatively small subset of the individuals. And then we just talked about this, that turkeys go back to the same places to breed every year. So there are pockets of turkeys on the landscape that may not interact with other pockets. And so that creates a situation, unlike with, say, a migratory species like a duck,
Right.
where there's more genetic mixing than there is in a population like a turkey.
Well, with ducks, it's also multiple species, where wild turkey, it's just one species. But
Yep.
I mean, they're crossing with those heritage, though.
That's
Yep.
right.
That's right.
Something
Yep.
very similar. And like you said, one is staying in the same area, and one is going, not coast to coast, but whatever,
Right.
across the
and
entire
turkeys kind of
continent.
lend
Continent to
themselves
continent,
to
yeah.
being like genetically isolated from one another, just because they have flocks that have a rigid structure, and the flocks go back to the same places, and there's certain dominant individuals that are within those flocks, and so just the way their social structure is kind of lends itself to what we're seeing, but it's still much more complex than we thought we were going to see.
So this may just be coincidence, but it seems, I'd probably even moved around the country, hunted them as much as you have, but it's nothing lately. But in my life I have, and it just seems like the places I've hunted, and I've hunted a lot of my growing up, was places that actually had turkey, somewhat Dudley too, had turkeys when they were almost extinct. So they were from the original stuff, whether it would be Southwest Alabama, over inside the Mississippi River on the levee, or stuff that was trapped and moved from those flocks. And they just seem to be that whatever seemed to be more original. It would be bigger spring flocks of hens and a dominant gobbler, and less gobblers that didn't actually gobble and try to participate. Then when you go, and it could just be a terrain thing, but clearly different as you go to somewhere in, say from Middle Tennessee north, or even Tennessee, it's like the adult gobblers spread out and all just about gobbled very differently than, and I don't know if it's just because the drainages around here maybe congregate them more or something, but it seemed to be distinctly different behavior, especially by the gobblers.
That's an interesting observation. And there's actually there is science to suggest that what you've seen with your own eyes is how turkeys behave in that. And I know you know how turkeys behave. That I wasn't saying that. That at the wild turkey's mating system, it is very plausible differs as you move about the species range, given the type of environment they're living in,
Right.
which has been shown for other birds that use the same type of mating system, kind of this lek type, exploded lek mating system, where you're in these pockets and you're displaying. So yeah, and it does appear that as you get into the more forested, like the eastern subspecies, they may function a little bit differently than some of your subspecies out west that are more visible,
Right.
where gobbling is not as much of a thing if everybody can see each other, say out west, versus you can't see each other and you have to rely on hearing one another. So yeah, that's an interesting topic, because I think it's super cool, because it speaks to how complex the bird's mating system is.
Oh, hey, clearly it's a lot more fun to hunt the ones that spread out and are gobbling in different directions and not all congregated, or, one guy's got them all shut up, but he's also got all the girls. You can't do anything with him. You know?
Yeah, you can mess up on a bird and go, well, okay, let's move over to this
one
other
over
one.
there.
Or even better, for me, it helps you be patient.
Well, think about
And you're going to kill a lot more turkeys being
patient.
patient than about anything. So if you still got something going on, you tend to be more patient.
Sure.
What gets you wound tighter? Watching 6 toms out west all walk towards you, and they're coming down the gun barrel, right? They're going to end up there. Or having 6 birds around you and 2 of them are coming to you and you don't know which way to look. Like,
Oh yeah.
Oh, number two.
That's the only scenario I know.
Number two all day long.
yeah, number 2 gets it literally just
Door number
erodes
2.
the fabric of your mentality and just puts you to jello.
Okay,
because,
I'm gonna one up you. So 2 are coming. You can't see any of them, and you can hear maybe 3 of them drumming, and you cannot see anything.
yeah.
That
You
is
just want to scream inside.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the magic. That's also when you want to make sure your pacemaker has a good battery too.
Wow. I'm just sitting here in my
he's-
mind
he's-
listening.
Here we
to
go.
them
He's at
drumming.
the dummy line right
Yeah.
now.
Here we go.
I love hearing them drum.
Woo.
Man,
I
that's
wish
so
I
good.
could hear it.
Yeah, I do too. All right, Mike. So what else? You mentioned something about this human shield. What's going on there?
Yeah, so this is some work that one of my former PhD students, who's now a postdoctoral researcher here at UGA, Nick, he did some analyses for both males and females, but the human shield idea, there's a hypothesis in the ecological literature that if you're an animal, you can gain benefit from associating in areas where human activity is high enough that it will reduce your predation risk. And so Nick was particularly interested in testing that with turkeys, with hens. And so he looked at kind of these metrics for human activity in the spring, which in our case was like, how close are you to areas that hunters are accessing, roads and these paths and trails, and these were, some of this data on hunted sites, and then versus kind of, are you more successful and do you survive better if you spend a lot of time near areas where humans are frequenting, or would you be better off like some of the tom data, the male data we've seen? They sense pressure and they they go to the back 40, they run to the hills. Is that a better strategy or what? And what Nick found, which is pretty cool, is that hens that are kind of hanging out in these areas associated with high human activity in the spring are more likely to accrue fitness benefits, higher survival, higher nest success. And that kind of supports this human shield hypothesis. And what's interesting to me is I often get asked, like, how can turkeys do so well in suburban areas or in areas with human activity? And this offers a plausible explanation, or at least a partial explanation for that maybe this bird is accruing some benefits to being associated with us, because in areas where there's a lot of our activity occurring, that maybe we're having a disproportionate effect on predator activity, which is driving risk down and ergo helping the bird. And what's funny, I guess it's not funny, it's just interesting, is we found this with gray foxes too. When we looked at gray fox activity, because gray foxes, their primary, predator competitor is the coyote. And so we published this a handful of years ago that gray foxes are starting to shift their activity centers to areas on the landscape that have low coyote risk. And a lot of those areas are human dominated. Farmsteads, homesteads, areas with a lot of human
we see
activity.
them all the time in town here.
Yep. And that's really interesting to me because I saw it with my own eyes on Talahalo when I worked there. When I was tracking gray foxes and coyotes at the same time, and turkeys and a bunch of other stuff. And I never could understand, why are there gray foxes only in these 3 pockets on Talahalo? Well, those 3 pockets were associated with houses. They were denning behind these houses, and they spent all night, when I was tracking them, all night around these these residences and these barns and farming activity. And I rarely got any coyote activity in those areas. And when I ended up mapping out the behavior of coyotes and foxes, I saw a very clear separation, that foxes were hanging out in areas where coyote activity was really low. And now fast forward, we're seeing some of the same trends with turkeys, and interestingly, there's a number of other research studies that have come out on other species showing the same thing, that there are a number of critters that clearly perceive a benefit to tolerating human activity because there's a fitness.
I think
Yeah,
older.
I mean, for deer especially,
yeah,
right?
Older
Yeah.
whitetails, older whitetail bucks.
I mean, back up to a highway or something, you know, you
Mhm.
feel like you're safe and you don't really have to worry about danger coming from
Yeah.
that direction.
Look, Cuz killed that deer with a lever action 30-30 on a club he joined for $100 that had whatever 40 people in it, and it was the second biggest, prettiest non-typical I've ever seen. It's like 230 inches, and he could hear the lady talking at her house. He was he was running so late he just went inside the front gate and sat down out to the left out there, I think it was. But he could hear the lady and like talking at the house. It was so close to someone's house.
But yeah, like with turkeys, you would think, you know, stray dogs, cats walking around,
Yeah.
you know, that could negate that effect. But
Well, in our case, the human activity proxy was like road access, like places that turkey hunters and trucks and
got it.
yeah. So it wasn't human activity like it was in the gray fox study. It was mostly just hunting activity, or you know, a secondary road that people are going to constantly be driving down or through to access
You
these
sure do
public
see a
areas.
lot of hens on the side of the road when they start
yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
nesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
Sure do.
Yeah, so that's that work.
Well, you know, I think about when we go to Nashville every year, we see them with our own eyes, but there's just
And those
like
more
turkeys
urban
in
areas, yeah.
neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Suburban Nashville's crazy.
My
wildlife.
sister lives in Wichita, and they have turkeys in their yard all the time.
Yeah, it's wild.
So Daniel's living in St. Louis for a year, and they've got that big forest park. I think it's like 1,200 acres in the middle of downtown. And his wife Caroline, she sent me pictures, video of like turkeys walking, 10 yards from her.
Well, look at
Huh?
have you ever
You know,
been to
big-
Disney?
I don't know how they.
There's turkeys everywhere.
Oh
at
yeah,
Disney.
that's right.
I might.
They're in
need
the
to go
middle of
down there.
downtown St. Louis.
Dudley, you got a question?
I've just been so fascinated with what we've been talking about. I
Yeah.
hadn't really built up a question. I do want to kind of get back to the turkey thing with the DNA. So, are the
Yeah, I've been seeing that you like to post.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I get kind of mad because y'all are like, we'll show the results tomorrow, and you have to wait on them.
Oh, that's good.
That is
Increases
good.
their following.
So, are you finding more? I'm assuming that the heritage parent is that usually the male.
We do not know.
Okay.
Obviously the samples that we've gotten that are coming back as 100%, like it's a heritage bird that a turkey hunter shot. Obviously those are mostly males. We've gotten a few hens that were shot in states where hens can legally be shot in the spring. But we don't know exactly how that equation works out to answer your question.
Okay.
We do have, I'm waiting on this test right now. Actually, we have a clutch of eggs that was hatched from what looks to be a smoke wild turkey. I mean, it could be a Narragansett heritage bird. But that hen hatched out a clutch of eggs this spring, and we obtained the hatched eggs, and those hatched eggs are at UTEP now being sequenced. So I'm really curious to see whether we will find that those poults are fully wild. Are they part heritage? Are they full heritage? It's going to take a lot more data to answer that question.
Got it.
Get the DNA from the egg shell.
We actually get it from the membrane on the inside of the egg. So
Okay.
that leathery looking
Right. Yes,
membrane,
Mhm.
it's got some vasculature through it. And so we go into that. In fact, right outside my lab, they're doing it. We go in and we cherry pick out a tiny piece of that membrane that you can see some vasculature through it. So you're pretty certain there'll be good DNA in there. And from that, we can determine the sex of the poult we can determine who the mother is, and we can determine who the father is.
Wow.
So that allows us to
It's like
start
Jerry
trying
Springer.
to get at what Dudley's asking.
And then the turkey thing, it just seems it's more difficult to guess. Like when you see the ducks, you're like, okay, I think that's this, and that. But
Right.
I'm more often wrong on my guess with the turkey.
Me too. Me too. I mean, what I am seeing now clearly though, if you go to the website, if you go to wildturkeylab.com, I mean wildturkeydna.com, I'm sorry, and you scroll through the results and you start kind of looking at birds that are that look fairly similar to each other, and you click on the results, you'll see there's some patterns there that become more clear through time. It just takes, I mean, we're doing this based on 100 and something birds, and to the earlier point I'm making, this is so complex. Every time we add birds data points, we gain a little bit more clarity. So getting a couple thousand more data points, like we'll get over the next couple of years, I think will really clear a lot of this up.
So, question, and you touched it a little bit, but I'm thinking about talking with Phil about it and ducks, and then it was like, what percentage was pure wild versus contaminated with tame European stuff and all. But then you talk about, and we're talking about mallards. So you're just talking about mallards versus maybe one other kind of mallard. There's so many different factors, and maybe varieties could have been introduced in turkeys. And so what is a definition that you can say that's a original strain pure wild genetics? Is there such a definition from all this that you can determine?
Yeah, I mean, we're under the idea that if it's coming back, 98% wild, then it's a wild bird. That
Right.
there's a little bit of noise. So within about 3%, that's the margin for error. So if anything right there around 2 or 3% of 100, we're considering it to be a fully wild bird. And the other thing that I'll just mention that throws a complication in what we're doing with wild turkey DNA is what I've learned since this project started. And that is, in some states, there were birds that were translocated as part of restoration that were wild heritage crosses.
Wow.
So they were hybrids.
Right.
Nebraska would be an example. The state of Nebraska, there were numerous releases of birds in Nebraska that were from stock that were known to be crossed between a wild and a heritage bird. And so some of those genetics were already present in our populations because of translocation efforts. And then you muddy that even further with the recognition that when we were restoring turkeys, we intentionally mixed subspecies within states. And so now you've got this natural kind of hybridization that we facilitated, right? We did it. We put them there.
Can I ask why?
Yeah, you can. Honestly,
We didn't know any better.
no, we actually did. The Spurred series that I do each spring, highlighting what I think to be a pioneer, the pioneers in the turkey world. This spring I'm doing James Earl Kinnemer.
Oh yeah,
James Earl is a legend. He was
big time.
a stalwart in the restoration efforts, and he'll tell you the same thing is when restoration was occurring, we in some cases you had states that refused to take birds from other states, so they translocated birds from within their state all over their state. There were some states that used the "we'll take whatever you'll give us" approach, and some of those states accepted birds from numerous subspecies. And then even within states, there was this idea that at low elevation, for instance, out west, maybe Rios will work better because Rios, it appears, are quite resilient, maybe more so than some of the other subspecies. And as we go up in elevation, maybe we need to use Merriam's because
Right.
that, there's a subspecies that naturally historically existed at higher elevations. And so some of that was intentional. Like if you go out west, you'll see states that have Rios and Merriams or hybrids, what we're seeing in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
That was intentional. Let's put what we think is going to do the best in certain areas based on our knowledge of the birds. And then some of it was just literally we want wild turkeys on the landscape, and we're willing to take them from where we can get them. And yeah, and then the question becomes, does that matter? I'm beginning to think that in some cases that part of the real boom we got in restoration was, at least, and this is a hypothesis, I can't, I don't have the data to prove it one way or the other, but my gut tells me that some of that success was at least partially driven by hybrid vigor. Just this idea that we stuck these birds in, and
Heterosis.
it was yeah. Wow. I mean and if so, that's an interesting result. And yeah, we'll keep digging.
Speaks to diversity.
It'd be what I thought about it would be. It was so fascinating to see what Phil was doing. I was thinking it would be so hard to do that on turkeys, but now that you've explained more to us today, it will be where you can look at where you'll have data at some point to go, okay, this part of the country or this area has a higher percentage of like the pure wild. This one's much lower, and it varies around. And does it correlate to nest success or any other things?
Yes.
Based on that, that's going to be so fascinating. I know it's going to take a while, but you'll start seeing glimpses of that pretty soon, won't you?
We can already see traces when we look at data from within populations. We can already see traces linking back to the source populations that were used to restore the population we're sampling. In other words, we can see linkages between maternal lines from one population back to the original study, the source population, if you will. So for instance, I can see birds from Savannah River site were used in restoration across much of the South. I can see maternal lines present in one of our Georgia populations that are traced back to Savannah River site.
Wow.
And so what I'm hoping we can ultimately accomplish is we can go into these populations, particularly ones that are struggling, and we can see what maternal lines are no longer there that we know were moved there. In other words, there's some that have disappeared. And can we go into these populations, particularly ones that are doing better, and can we identify maternal lines that have persisted? And if we can,
yes,
and we know where those sources are at, which we do and we will, then could we identify ways of increasing hybrid vigor in a targeted management scenario through time? That's where my head is 2 years from now, 3 years
Interesting.
from now.
Very interesting.
He's thinking way down the road.
Yeah,
of
man.
Of course.
I just want to turn every stone, man.
Yeah,
I want to turn every stone.
That's the only way you're going to really know definitively. Yeah. So I this is circling back a little bit, but I know a little while ago listened to you. So the importance of the genetic diversity thing and how they kind of manage themselves over evolution to be more, diverse. Didn't you speak to that?
Well, I mean, we know in a general sense that genetic diversity is important because as you start getting reduced genetic diversity, the population in general is less resilient. They're less resilient to habitat loss, habitat changes,
Bingo.
predation pressures. And so with higher diversity, you have the expectation that the animal in general is going to be much more resilient. And so as you start seeing reduced genetic diversity, that causes it, like in the duck world, that causes a flag because we know from science that once you get to a certain level of reduced genetic diversity, then the population would be expected to start having issues with reduced reproductive success, reduced individual survival, those types of things. And so, Phil is a genetic egghead. He's a genetic nerd.
God bless him for it too.
that's where his mind thinks, and
Yep.
I completely see that side of population management in a way that to be frank with you, I didn't really look at that side until we started this project, and I started seeing these trends in the data that I really want a couple thousand more samples
Yeah.
so that I can determine if it's real, and if so, where is it at on the landscape, and then how do we address it?
Well, that's what's so exciting about this project. It's not, because it's you and him. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = like 6, 8, 10. Because of the, I always said great relationships, especially on business of any type, is like where my weaknesses are your strengths, but your weaknesses are my
100%.
strengths. Are my strengths.
100%.
And
yeah.
so y'all are a perfect example of that. I'm so excited about what I was going to get to, and I'm drawing a conclusion. That's something I'm not mapped out to do necessarily, but it just seems to be the genetic. I was looking for what are all the reasons why it's so much healthier to be hatching more and having better chances to have more turkeys when you don't kill all your gobblers. You've already told us that before. So many people are like, oh my gosh, we got 10 jakes. That means we can kill all of these but one of them, and this, that, and other. But it seems to me like the more closely, you're not going to be like deer, but the closer you get to where there's almost one gobbler per hen, or there's many more gobblers per hen ratio, you got a lot better chance of the diversity you're talking about.
Well, interestingly enough, we're doing some, turkeys are supposed to be kind of skewed towards females, right? They're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're seeing we've gone into some of our populations and we've simulated, the population is in decline. We've simulated what is it going to take to reverse it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, getting, we need twice as many females in the flock as we have to really get the population reversed, or we need to depress harvest in a way to where we reduce the removal of the male segment.
Right.
And so it's complex because, obviously with turkeys, not all of your females are producing offspring, and then definitely we've shown genetically that a lot of your males are not involved in producing poults. So it just, again, to me, it kind of speaks to the complexity of this bird's mating system. It's so different than like deer, that's just a promiscuous animal that, a yearling buck is just as likely to do this as a 3-year-old. And boy, that's not the way the turkey world functions. And I was just talking with a couple of folks before we got on. I ran them out of here so that we could start this podcast. But just this this emerging work we're doing right now, showing that these hens that are within these groups, right, these social groups, it appears that these hens that are spending time, they're associating with everybody in the flock, right? They're involved in all of the flock aspects, which logically you would assume that is a socially higher ranking hen, right? If she's involved in everybody's business, she's socially involved with everybody, she's interacting with everybody, she's much more likely to be successful reproductively. And so the more you learn about this bird and the more you learn about how they structure themselves in flocks, it in some ways it creates more questions than answers. But we're really starting now with the GPS data and the genetics data that we have to be able to start pairing these data sets and answering some of these really complex questions that we've never been able to answer before.
Is it too complicated for you to, like, say an ideal ratio would be 4 hens to every gobbler, or some number like that?
It depends on the population, and it depends on your productivity, your male removal. And so like what we're simulating in these models is, we can tweak every one of those. We can tweak the percentage of harvest. We can tweak how many poults we produce. We can tweak the sex ratio of the poults that we produce. So the output depends on every input parameter, if that makes any sense, Bobby. It literally, everything you're tweaking changes the outcome. It's just that some things change the outcome a lot more, like the percentage of nests that are hatching, or the percentage of females that are living, or the percentage of males that are removed. There's certain things that are more impactful than, say, the sex ratio of a clutch, or the clutch size in particular. 9 versus 10, that's largely not relevant. So the answer to your question is it depends. Not being coy, it does.
No,
It
Yeah.
depends.
well, we've evolved. I mean, I've hunted we had a club with people in it, and until more recent years, that's pretty much where I hunted. A little bit of public land hunting, but it was just, if there's a turkey gobbling, you go kill them. If you're down at the end of the season, there's just one. Everybody's maybe trying to kill that last one. You just thought that way. And if that's what you have, and you're hunting in a club or on land, and hey, if I let this turkey go, someone's going to kill him anyway. And that's all good. But all I'm getting to is the people that do have more control over stuff. I feel like I've learned that from listening to you and then watching things evolve, that if you get like lucky enough to have a really good hatch and you kind of bounce back where you need to be, you should manage to keep it that way, not to like, okay, we can kill more now.
Right.
And like where there is, where you do have a few more gobblers, per hens than you used to have. And, and obviously there's other factors than that, but it just seems like it tends to come back easier when you've had a little bit of discretion,
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I see a lot of. It was hard to get around, a group back in 2015 and have that discussion, because we didn't have a problem,
Yeah.
right? Well, we didn't perceive a problem. I think enough of us as gamekeepers and as land stewards and as hunters have seen that we do have problems. And if things start improving, the way I look at it, like before we started taping, I don't ever want to go back to where we were back in the day when we didn't have turkeys. When I'm reading accounts of folks that came before me that didn't hear a bird. They
Yes.
hunted for days and days and days and
Yes.
didn't hear a
Yeah.
turkey. And
Yep.
I don't want that to happen on my watch. And so whatever I can do to prevent that from happening. And we were talking about some similar deer angles before we started as well. As I don't want to see any of these things that I cherish go to a place where it doesn't look good. Not on my watch. Let's keep our kind of our wits about us, and understand that we can leave it better than we found it.
100%. The other thing's quite different than ducks also is that you're pretty much stuck with what you do. If you've got a place, that's the place you hunt. Turkeys, I mean, that's it. What you do there, how you harvest, how you manage all that, how you protect it, whatever, you're stuck with it. I mean, you can't just like set a better mousetrap and catch a bunch of them flying over again, like migratory, like doves or ducks,
Right.
That got me thinking. So Bobby texted me. Was it yesterday? I was driving home from Louisiana, and you texted me and asked me like some things to start thinking about as deer season ending and turkey season is approaching. What can you do to help your birds? I started thinking about that while I was driving, and I realized that I started having that conversation, that mental game, around the middle of December, because at that point I was like, all right, how many toms are showing up on camera? Which stands am I going to burn this year on this property that I'm working on?
Yep.
Where do I need to do my winter disking? So I started the mental games back in the heart of deer season on when I come out of the gate, what can I do? Prioritize, here's my list, and I'm going to check them off in a way to where the high priority things, I make absolutely certain I knock those things out. And if I can get to the bottom, I can get to the bottom. But if I can't, at least I'm going to, disc these fallow areas that are within these fields to improve, brood cover. I'm going to burn these 3 stands that didn't get burned last year. I'm going to go burn, hit this stand that's attractive for broods every year. So as it was yesterday when I was driving, I was answering your question in my head as I was driving, and I realized that I was doing that before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to ask, like, can a guy right now, should he start thinking about, well, I'm going to go and bush hog some areas to create some strutting zones? I'm not talking about in a food plot, but maybe there's some sage grass around the pines, young pines, maybe trying to create some openings. I'm hearing of guys taking dump truck loads of sand and creating dusting areas. Do you hear of people doing that? Is there any benefit to doing work like that?
I don't know of people that are doing the dusting thing. I do have some landowners that I am friends with that I know, to be honest with you, they actually maintain certain parts of certain roads and the edges of some of their food plots. They intentionally kind of keep those in essentially just bare dirt and sand because they see such, constant perpetual dusting in those areas. The strutting thing, I don't really look at it like that, but I will tell you, if I have areas that are dominated in broom sedge, rank grasses. Now you got to be careful with some of your sod forming grasses because you don't want to make them mad.
Mm-hmm.
But if I've got areas that have mostly native grasses in it, but they're kind of rank, I'm not only going to try to mow some of that, but I'm going to put a disc on it. And that would have been about 2 or 3 weeks ago in my part of when we got that super cold snap.
Right.
I'm going to try to open up some of that with a single pass disc because I want to stimulate those native forbs and legumes that are going to be attracting insects like, some of your, various high quality deer forage is the name of it's escaping
Like
me.
ragweed or something?
Ragweed. It's exactly. Thank you, Dudley.
Mm-hmm.
That you can really stimulate ragweed with a winter disking. And so that's, I'm not really thinking mowing so much, Bobby. I'm thinking like trying to stimulate the soil itself.
And
Doctor Disturbance.
Well, you on that winter disking, I was going to ask more questions about that. Are you just going field edges, or are you disking the whole field, or every open area you can?
I'm not doing the entire fields, but I'm not saying you shouldn't. It's
Gotcha.
just the properties that I have implemented that on near my house. We don't have fields that would need that. It's more of a targeted, it's either field borders
Right.
or it's strips that are going across fields that were left fallow to diversify vegetative structure. It's that. It's not so much the whole field is in this vegetative community that needs to be tweaked. It's just a part of it.
So it's not too late to do that here, is it?
No.
There you go.
So I was going to ask you, what if we burn like right now,
don't you?
while it's still cold, and it's in the next couple of weeks, it's going to warm up some, but we still have some cold. Would you go in behind the burn if you could, and say I'm burning off prairie grassland type stuff, and disc some spots behind the burn?
If you do it before your soil temperatures are starting to rise, the closer you wait to where you start getting green up,
Right.
the more likely you are to stimulate grasses with a disking than you are forbs and legumes. So you want to, that's why you typically would want to wait and do it in the heart of winter,
Right.
because you're not going to stimulate grasses that could be problematic.
I don't think I've never done that. What about you, Dud?
Strip disking?
Yeah.
It's cheap. That's one of the reasons
Yeah,
I do it. It's cheap. And,
Well, I mean, if you're doing like this, we preach diversity. That's one more thing to make it more diverse, too.
And another thing folks will do is they'll spray strips of clethodim. But I mean, you're probably waiting until the spring to do that.
just to knock your grasses back. Yeah.
And get more broadleaves.
Do you have a favorite grass? I was going to ask you that today anyway. You have a favorite grass herbicide? Because I see stuff that is going to come back really good. And even where we've gotten pretty good stands of clover, I've learned I got to get on the reemergence of grasses pretty quick in the green up. What do you have a particular favorite grass herbicide or two?
in like legume type plots,
Yeah.
I usually just use either clethodim or sethoxydim.
Right. Okay.
I was just having this conversation with a client this morning via email that is, planting joint vetch and Elise clover in combination in plots.
Oh, look at that.
And I know y'all know this, but both of those plants are slow to get established.
Very.
And when you have a slow to get established plant on a property that has crabgrass on it,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
you're going to be dealing with crabgrass that's going
or
to come up through
fescue
that.
or tay and ryegrass. There's a bunch of bad grasses.
Yeah.
They're both legumes. I wonder if you could use treflan or surflan or something, some kind of pre-emerge. I need to research that.
So are you saying you try to knock out that crabgrass?
Well, on those plots, I mean, I recommend that he do a pre-spray,
this time of year in early spring, you can post emerge, you can smoke them because they're still going to be if you let them take off when it gets warm, then you're going to have more trouble. But they're still, you just need to have a little bit of warmth where they grow. But this time of year, it's not hard to kill them at all.
Yeah, and he's drilling these plots too, so he's not disturbing the soil once the grasses have been knocked back. So,
are you seeing a lot of people use the Elise clover and vetch?
In central and south Louisiana, I'm a big fan of Elise clover because it grows well in those soils down there, and it's tolerant of really heavy browsing pressure. And so on some properties down in the central part of Louisiana and those alluvial soils, I've had good luck with Elise clover because of that, because it will grow well, but it will also tolerate what on some properties is a really high deer density.
We're trying some.
Yeah, we've got
it available.
And Deer Vetch Plus, which is Ashinomi. Deer Vetch is just Ashinomi, and Deer Vetch Plus is Ashinomi plus Elise clover, which I've been calling Alice. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
You might be right.
I've always called it Alice.
Yeah,
I think it's tomato.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're excited about
the
being
wise. It's more sexier if you got the Elise.
Yeah, I liked it a lot better when you said it. So
I mean, back in the 90s, when I first started paying attention to stuff, our state deer coordinator was telling everybody in too high deer density, small food plot stuff, Alice clover. Way back in the day.
Well, MDWFP is highly recommended.
Slow to establish, but it is a stud once you get it there.
I'm gonna mix some cow peas in with mine.
All right,
some protein.
Yeah,
peas.
you're gonna mix in a Gallagher fence.
Yeah. All right. I'm not trying to change the subject, but I've had this in my mind for a while.
Throw it out there, Dud.
Ruh-roh.
Ice storm.
Yeah.
Everybody's wanting to know, is that going to help the turkey hunting? What is it going to help the habitat? What were they eating when everything was a solid block of ice? So can you hit on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I don't see a possible scenario where the areas with extensive ice damage would be a positive. I just can't. I can't see a scenario there. I mean, obviously it's going to increase cover in a few years because of the breaks to the tree canopy. But I was more concerned, at least right out of the box, watching some of the imagery that I was seeing online with just the incredibly cold temperatures, but two, just the fact that foraging resources were essentially non-existent. And I actually got a number of messages on social media from people asking me to do a post about this and how turkeys respond and tolerate these really dramatic cold and winter weather events. And you probably already know this, but turkeys can hunker down for a few weeks and they can make it work. But once you start extending that, then you're asking for mortalities. If there is a silver lining, it's that turkeys right now are getting as big as they're going to be. Like they're really peaking their fat reserves. And so if there was a time for something like that to happen, that they could get through it, it was then. So I don't know, maybe you have. I haven't gotten any reports of mortalities or anything like that. I think probably what you just saw was they hunkered down, They got through it. They burned up some fat that hopefully with the acorns across the south, they can go ahead and stock that back up pretty quick, and it will be a minor blip on the radar. But man, it's heartbreaking to see some of the places
Yeah,
that were devastated.
we were talking about, well, maybe they can eat some of these dormant buds out of the treetops, like I think a lot of them do in floods and things. But gosh, they were even frozen
They were covered.
solid.
Yeah, they were covered in ice. Yeah, yeah.
Tough time. Ooh. Yeah. Lanny, you got a question? Another question?
I was still thinking about that strip disc and about how I've been missing out the whole time.
Well, I was thinking about this Elise clover.
Yeah, Elise sounds much
Do I
better.
need to Google this?
No. We just go with it. We go with what sounds better.
We always yield to you.
I'm looking forward to planting some.
Oh yeah.
But what can I expect as far as, let's just say we get it planted the first part of April. When can I start expecting to see some growth out there and some deer utilizing it?
Yeah, so I don't usually plant it until later in April when the soil temperatures are a little higher.
Right.
Because it is slow to establish, and so it's going to get up and it's going to sit there in a seedling stage and look like it's just almost nothing for a few weeks, and then it will go ahead and get going.
That's like planting peppers in the garden. You're just it's like you're wasting your time putting them in the early spring.
Yeah. But once that plant gets going, Bobby, it produces a lot of forage, and if your rains are timely, obviously, it will really grow rapidly to the point where, I've used it on properties where, deer density was, a deer per 5 or 6 acres, and it will tolerate browsing pressure from that type of density, assuming, of course, no, prolonged drought or anything like that. But in a normal situation where you've got some rain that's kind of replenishing things, it's pretty resilient to browsing.
How are y'all managing those plots in Louisiana? Are they perennial plots?
No, that clover will reseed, but it's considered an annual. So
Gotcha.
We're reseeding every year. Same with joint vetch, as you know. I mean, it will try to reseed, but it's pretty weak.
Mm-hmm. So planting every year. And are you doing very many fields that are mixes of Elise and joint vetch?
Yeah, we've done that on a number of properties, and it works fairly well. Of course, we've tried. We've included cowpeas, and on a lot of these properties, at least the ones that I'm involved with, there's just too many deer. I mean, they find them and they're gone in a week, and you feel like you really kind of wasted your resources. And I don't want these folks to waste resources. Obviously, I'm trying to manage a deer herd and optimize their resources. So we've moved on these high density herds. We've moved to just these other plants, and we're not planting any of the beans or peas.
Yeah. And are you coming back in and putting a fall crop on top of it, or just letting it go throughout the winter?
Ideally, what we've done, if the acreage allows it, is to set aside summer forage plots that we're only using for summer forage plots, because as you know, you're going to run into issues where if you're double cropping, you may compromise the quality of one for the other. Mm-hmm. The other situation you'll see is, particularly with Elise clover and even with joint vetch, in the deep South, our bow seasons are starting. Exactly. And those plants are still jam up.
Yeah. Great places to hunt.
Yes. Right. And so I'm kind of trying to utilize those plots, not just from a forage perspective, but for a hunting perspective. And that will extend way into my archery season, late October. So I'm trying, if the acreage is there, I'm asking my folks to put your summer forages here, and let's hunt those too, and then let's isolate our winter plots. So
those Labor Day, September droughts. I mean, think about it. You got something with a heck of a root system already there. Yeah. You can't get a food plot established. Right. So that's going to be the best bow spot there is at the beginning of the season, even if you do plant something.
So there's not a lot of I mean, we're talking about some things that a guy can do, but one of the other things would be, Mike, I'm asking your opinion, just kind of keep your property quiet, stay off of it, and just let those birds enjoy it until that March 15th or March 20th.
You know me well enough to know I'm a fan of a small footprint. Whether it's deer, turkeys, anything. I'm a big fan of a small footprint. Yeah, I mean, if I'm kind of looking at it, if I'm sitting here thinking like I'm going to a property Saturday, and my mind is I already know from my cameras, I know where birds are using, and so I'm going to go directly to other parts of the property, but I'm not I'm not going anywhere near those 2 food plots those birds are hanging out on, because I don't want them to know I exist right now. As long as they're happy, and they are, based on the images, I'm leaving them to forage in that bottom between those 2 plots, and I don't really need to tinker around with it. But
Just want them to stay there.
Yeah, keep it quiet. Well, guys, why don't we can think about another question, but in the meantime, Richie, why don't you ask him a trivia question?
Good luck with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we kind of got out of his lane with this one, so we'll see how wide his knowledge base is.
So our listener who left a review, Jeff Kronheim, my favorite new podcast.
Oh, wow.
I'm a middle-aged Yankee who was hunted a total of 1 time, but I have come to love this podcast. The team managed to be equally informative and engaging while promoting conservation ethics in a charming and uncompromising way.
What?
I
is
don't
he
know.
talking about this podcast?
That's what Bobby wrote this one. We know Bobby wrote this
Charming.
one. This is Bobby.
Bobby got an
Yeah,
AI. Bobby got an AI bot to write
I
it
mean,
for him.
And then
think
he ends it by, I don't know how they pull it off, but they do.
Well, we don't know how we pull it off either.
I agree with him on that.
All right. Well, what was his name again?
We got Jeff Kronheim.
All right, Jeff. Thank you. I'm
Thank
not
you,
even going to
Jeff.
attempt his last name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had to read that a few times.
That was a good one.
So, yeah, and today's trivia is brought to us by our buddies at the Peanut Patch.
And you know we like
right.
those boiled peanuts.
Boiled
peanuts.
peanuts.
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
All right, Dr. Chamberlain, here's your question. Are Dalmatians born with their spots, or are they born completely white?
That is a good question. That is perfect.
I have heard the answer to this, and damn, I cannot remember the answer. I think they're born white.
That is right.
He's 100% as
Isn't
always.
that interesting?
That is interesting.
Did you know that, Larry?
I did not know that.
Toxic, what did you know? Are you on Facebook Marketplace?
No, I am.
For a new disc.
He has inspired me every time we've done this, and I'm checking my trail cameras
There
to
you
see if there's
go.
any turkeys right now.
There you go.
So here,
I've got an odd one as an aside. I have a single hen showing up with 2 strutters on 1 food plot, and she's been there for 3 weeks. And I cannot figure out why she's there when the rest of the birds are a quarter mile away. But she's by herself, and she has 2 strutters that have split off from the other group of toms, and they are shadowing her. And it's comical because, of course, she's not paying any attention to them. But that's a weird one.
They're saying
Talking
there's a
to
chance.
cameras.
Yeah,
They're hoping
there's a
chance. Did she just walk off? Hold on a minute.
Well, with these trivias, we're trying to, you say you'll have something tonight at the dinner table, Lanny, that you can ask your wife. And say,
I
"Did you know?"
appreciate that.
Richie, what's the deal? How long does
right.
it take them to get their
so
spots?
here's our explanation here. All Dalmatian puppies are born almost entirely white without their characteristic spots. Their spots begin to develop as they grow, usually appearing within 2 to 3 weeks and continuing to fill until they're around 18 months to 2 years old.
Wow. You've got an interesting story about a Dalmatian, don't you,
I
Bobby?
did. A scary story, yeah.
One got after you one time?
No, just I saw one in a place I should not have seen one, and it spooked me.
Did you run off?
I backed out of there and got out of there. I sure did.
You know, we had one down here at the Mossy Oak Mall and all. We were outside eating with Daniel. He was probably 8 years old, 9, 8. And a couple had theirs sitting by him on a leash, and just out of nowhere, it went for his throat.
Oh, really?
I've heard that kind of.
And and so they grabbed the leash just in time. But I mean, within maybe a foot of going straight for his throat, it's like it scared us to death.
Ooh.
Yeah, I had a roommate with one, and you had to be friends with that dog, or it it would attack you.
So, Toxie, do you remember at Lee Haven
Oh,
the Miss
I
Bet
knew you were going
supposedly
The azalea garden.
Camellia, I think. it was.
Camellia garden.
Azaleas and camellias.
Azaleas and camellias.
Okay. All of those.
I know
That's right.
everything.
It was literally a botanical garden in the middle of the woods.
It was, you
grown
could
up.
see the remnants of it.
And she had been attacked and possibly killed
By her Dalmatian.
That's right.
Bobby's going to dramatize. He's going to write a novel about it.
Well, that's the story I'd heard.
So
And
you
then-
were in the azalea garden?
No, I was down there. I had some hunters from Texas, and one of them wanted to see where he was going to hunt the next. We needed to move a stand, so about 10 o'clock at night, we drove down.
That
in.
was the PBR Cowboys that saw that.
No.
Well, they did see one.
They
They
may
saw
have,
it.
but I was deep in the woods, and there was a Dalmatian in the road, deep in the woods, and it was slick and clean, and it spooked all of us.
Did it have crooked teeth?
I didn't look at his teeth. I just
No,
backed
but
it.
they say the ones that turn into ghosts or take good care of themselves, and are well groomed and all that.
Well, it spooked me.
We get Bill Dunlap to do a painting.
That's
of
a
that for you.
That's a ghost story podcast for another day.
Yeah, we need
Because
to
there's
bring that up
1,000
in
ghost
Halloween,
stories about
yeah.
that
I'm gonna look
place.
at
Mike-
Dalmatians in
Mike,
a different
before-
light now.
Oh, yeah. They're
Yeah.
pretty rough.
So, Mike, before we get off here, what's going on with the foundation?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so we had another good fall. I had two young men that I mentored on several hunts this fall. We had a good time, and now we're set looking for the spring. We're gonna do a couple of activities over the spring, and then even into the summer, and then I'll select another cohort, and we'll keep plodding along. And I've got some things planned with both groups that I've done thus far that we'll all get together moving forward. And yeah, it's exciting. It's as we've talked about before, it's tough, but it's good. It's good.
What's the website where guys can go look at that?
austonsway.org. It's austonsway.org.
Such
Yeah,
a
there.
great,
Looking
such
at
a
it right
great
now.
name,
Yep.
such a great honor.
You
such
came
a-
up with it, if you remember.
Yeah,
Yep.
It was your brain idea. So
It's amazing. Yep.
yeah, it is. Mike, we always enjoy talking to you.
I do as well. And you've got me I've already got a browser open. So like when we hang up, I'm Googling the pronunciation of
Elise. I'm calling it Elise. Yeah. I like it.
yeah.
Wow. Well, we'll see you at NWTF, I'm sure.
100%.
Yeah, you're like a rock star walking around NWTF.
Yeah.
You'll have an
It's hard for you to
entourage.
get around.
Have an entourage.
You might need a couple.
Bodyguards.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and Toxie both. Toxie's the same way. That's-
Yeah, what all I'm hoping for is to get through it without getting the flu or COVID. So
Correct.
There you
Oh,
go.
that's the worst part of it.
Man, I forgot
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, but we talk about this every year. We all look forward to that. It's crazy, but it's so cool to see that many people jacked up about this bird.
Yeah.
man.
Oh my God.
It is.
It's just
And the fun
it's
and
so
celebration of that, it's the only time all that crew gets together and stuff. But we've got so many cool things going on this year with
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, concerts and parties and
Pour one for the Poles.
Pour one for the Polts is
Yeah.
there. We got the Conservation Aid concert with a
Yeah.
bunch of big name country stars this year too.
We're going to be giving
A
away
Gamekeeper edition Rattay shotgun.
Yeah, sure
with
are.
a
Oh,
Silencer Central shotgun sounds on it.
That's right. Maybe we could, if the foundation, if y'all do a hunt or something and you need a shotgun, I bet we can make one of those Gamekeeper edition Rattays available to you
Yeah.
if you need them.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would
I
be
think-
awesome. I shoot a retail in it, man. It's that's a hammer.
We'll send Lanny's.
Good gun.
That way,
There we
because
go,
Lanny
yeah.
won't be using it.
In
Yeah,
store.
get out of my closet. Y'all stay out of my closet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But those Gamekeeper editions are in stores now.
They are. If you've got a Rattay dealer near you, you got to go look at
Go
it.
check it out.
Yeah, it's a 20 gauge, Mike. I
nice. Nice.
like a 20 gauge.
Light as a feather.
All right, guys, this has been fun. Mike, thank you so much. We always
Of
enjoy
course.
talking to you.
Of course. Love talking to you guys anytime.
Yeah, and follow him along at the wildturkeylab.com too.
It's the greatest website for turkey learning.
Instagram page, isn't it?
Well, he's also got a website.
Does he really?
Yeah, look at there.
He's got everything.
I don't know how you find the time to do all this. I really don't.
He's got everything.
You can go on the line and find him.
yeah, wildturkeylab.com or on Instagram.
You know, when he hangs up after talking to us, I bet he's like, those knuckleheads.
How did they hold that thing together over there? Yeah.
No, he's probably asking why in the world we didn't ask the Smokey and the Bandit question again.
Well, I've worn him out on smoking.
I have not watched that movie in a long time.
Maybe it's
But
time maybe we should
It
do
is. It is. If I go home tonight and tell my wife, "Hey, sweetie, we're gonna watch Smokey and the Bandit, I'll have to do it alone in the other room. She's not going to watch that movie.
Not again.
You know what we could do? We could rent one of those rooms at the NWTF
Just
and
run
play
it
the
on a loop.
music.
Just run it on.
Yeah, I'd love that.
No,
Have it
just
streaming 24/7.
Yeah, just run it in a loop. People can just come sit down and watch it all the time.
That'd be good.
Yeah,
I
we
love
do.
that
We
movie.
do. We are working on a little surprise that I can't say.
Oh,
what do we got?
Dudley.
I forgot. What is it?
Well, I'll tell you later.
Oh, my bad.
What's the secret? You know, I
It's
can keep a
just really
secret.
cool.
All
I'll
right.
tell you about it later.
One of my favorite sayings, Dudley, I can keep a secret no matter what. It's just the people I tell it to that
They
can't keep
won't
their mouth
keep
shut.
on saying everything.
Yeah, around West Point, the way to get the word out is telephone, telegram, and teletaxi.
Oh, man. That is not true. That is not true. That is my saying about Bobby.
The mouth of the South.
All right, Mike, we'll let you go.
Let's see.
All right, guys, it's good talking to you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
Appreciate you
Yeah,
being
man.
with us
See
today.
y'all.
Yes,
Guys,
sir.
this has been a lot of fun. You
Always.
got anything else we need to?
I want to know what Dudley's secret is. Maybe.
tell you.
All right.
All right, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.